What spell do I have to cast to forget this movie? Oh wait, I don't have to, because there is nothing memorable about this film. What's up, everybody? First and foremost, happy Halloween. I have restructured this thing so many goddamn times, but I believe I've reined in the stream of consciousness, so strap in, pray, because you know, even Disney Magic couldn't save this movie. And let's review the terrifyingly mediocre film known as Hocus Pocus. Let's be honest, if this wasn't a Disney production and didn't have the bloated Disney budget, this movie would have suffered the same fate as the Sanderson sisters. 300 years of darkness. And let me tell you, it deserves to spend even more time in darkness. There aren't a lot of movies that I would say are irredeemable, but this is one of them. I fucking hate this movie. But the reason why might actually surprise you, but we're gonna get to that in just a minute. Normally, we would start with like a synopsis, characters, plot, etc., but we're just gonna speed run through that shit so we can get right into the review. Plot, it's a MacGuffin, hide and seek kind of thing. Synopsis, some old hags come back from beyond the grave to murder children. Characters, honestly, I don't remember any of the characters' names. But at this point, who fucking cares? For the sake of this review, we're just gonna call him Skater Boy, his sister Ginger Snap, the SS, Cursed Pussy, and Pumpkin Spice Latte. Real quick, I'm gonna share with you guys one of my initial notes. The problem with this film is actually quite simple. It's a comedy, but it's not funny.
End of demo.
For the entire duration of this film, I only laughed twice. Speaking of funny, one of my biggest criticisms of this film actually came to me while I was writing a positive note. It pissed me off, if I'm being 100% honest, because I had 2 pages worth of material just explaining the flaws, and then lo and behold, it can just be summed up with one word. Vacant. This movie is as empty as the head of a Gen Z kid getting asked a geography question. Is as empty as the hopes and dreams of a single woman in her 60s. Is as empty as a politician's promise. Is as empty as a dinner plate in a third world country. Is as empty as a cop's magazine after a BLM riot. Is as empty as the evidence for a flat earth. Is as empty as the man's balls who just left your mom's house. Nearly every flaw in this movie can be traced back to the fact that this movie just contains nothing of substance. Now, I mentioned that I realized this while I was writing some positive feedback, and that was Skater Boy had some game. My guy was charming AF. It was like watching Casanova take his first steps. Dude gets shown up in the middle of his class and then proceeds to ask the girl who schooled him for her number in front of everybody. There's a reoccurring gag that he's a virgin, which is bittersweet because it's actually pretty funny, but then you realize you have to keep watching the movie. Which isn't. Like, obviously, the writers had some comedic talent, but it's just such a shame to see that wasted. And oh my god, I just realized how my parents feel about me. While we're on the topic of positive elements, I'm just gonna blast through the rest because there aren't very many. I thought some of the props were actually pretty cool, and besides Bette Midler's buck teeth, I think they really nailed the aesthetic and just the general design of the whole movie. It's actually okay. The soundtrack was actually phenomenal. It's the only thing that keeps you remotely interested in this movie. And I have no shame in admitting it, but the song Put a Spell on You kicks fucking ass. And lastly, I'm glad that they made the bully in this one of the ugliest motherfuckers to live. This guy's looking like Pluto from The Hills Have Eyes. Now, my criticism segment is actually going to start off on a strange note, which is the rating system. And I'm not talking about the Rotten Tomatoes score. I'm talking about this film being labeled PG. Only in some dire Doctor Strange taking a glimpse inside probable futures is this movie ever going to be redeemable. And that's largely in part to the fact that this movie doesn't know who it's intended for. I'm actually curious to see how much the final product aligns with the original concept, because This movie is so indecisive. Now, this is an issue in and of itself, but I think more than anything, it's a symptom of the rating system. They attempted to make this film appealing to everybody, but in the process, they made it so much more less appealing. Had they leaned into it being more family friendly, or if it had been a raunchy teen comedy, that challenge would have resulted in a better final product. I'll give you a few examples of what I mean. Like, there's a bunch of innuendo and, like I said, the aforementioned virgin jokes, but there's nothing explicit or overt. The SS doesn't actually eat kids, they just steal their life force. And the brief moments of violence are so ridiculously hammy and cartoonish, with one exception where the SS gets burnt alive in a furnace.
Well, well, well. How the turntables...
Credit where credit's due. Conversely, a movie that reconciles its rating with its content is School of Rock. School of Rock was, no pun intended, tuned down as low as it could without cheapening or sacrificing the concept.
Sticking it to the man?
Yes!
Kids can enjoy this movie, ethically speaking, despite its PG-13 rating. Admittedly, I haven't seen the Barbie movie, but I was super interested when I heard there was a certain comedian in the lead role. But from my understanding, they actually did this pretty well too. I mean, it is Barbie after all. Now, this might not seem like a big deal in and of itself, but it just adds to the indecisiveness of this film. And that segues into a less egregious critique I have of this movie. From a storytelling perspective, I don't know if a movie was the best medium to tell this tale. There is so much material within the film that could have been so cool to explore, and out of all the hijinks, we get the most boring plot line possible. I don't want to give Disney any ideas, but come on! Billy the Zombie having a love triangle with the sisters, cursed pussy guarding a house for 300 years, a spell book that was a gift from Satan? I understand that these are things that are elements in an already established story, but had this been turned into like a TV show, these would have been really cool episodes, and honestly, there's enough original content within the film that they could have made that were way better than the story we got. Although I will say, I don't think Disney's gonna greenlight a project about a human leather-bound book. The general vacancy, the lack of direction, the rating system, all of these things are reasons why I say this film is irredeemable. I'm not saying that just to be mean, although it is a bonus. This movie is just fundamentally flawed. If everything else went according to plan, this movie would still be broken. Every critique past this point can be summed up with blank. What blank? There's no pace if the movie is boring. There's no comedy if the only joke is Bette Midler's prosthetic buck teeth, which I hope you enjoy, because they're gonna do it about 1 billion fucking times. Now, I mentioned this earlier, but in case you missed it, I'm sure that you've already picked up on it. I fucking hate this movie. But my disdain has little to do with everything I've pointed out thus far. In fact, I'd go so far as to say my opinion on this movie in a general sense is actually just indifferent. I despise this movie for what it represents. If you couldn't tell, I'm an avid consumer of cult films. So much so that I don't even bother talking about movies with friends or family. Try explaining the plot of Hell Comes to Frogtown with a family member, I dare you. And that's an easier one, mind you. Anywho, throughout my years of watching B-movies and forgotten classics, you come across some gems, and you come across some stinkers. Some cult films, to put it bluntly, have a reputation. Rocky Horror Picture Show, Samurai Cop, Toxic Avenger, I mean, fuck. Even The Room is household quotable and got its own biopic. Sometimes, however, a film does not live up to its reputation. Taking into consideration what I'm about to say, I'm gonna stick out my neck in good faith and say an example of this is Troll 2. Personally speaking, I think it's a little overrated considering how high up on the tier list it is for movies that are so bad they're good. It definitely deserves its time in the spotlight. Unlike this movie, I did enjoy it. I just think it's a little overrated. Now, normally, tanking commercially and then being flayed alive critically is a recipe for a cult film, but at the end of the day, you still need people to watch your movie in order to gain that status. Earlier I mentioned School of Rock as a counterexample to Hocus Pocus in regard to how they dealt with the rating system. And I'd like to do the same thing with the process of becoming a cult film using Idiocracy as the counterexample. Now, I know some people are going to disagree with me on this, but the fact of the matter is, Idiocracy never would have become a cult film if it wasn't sabotaged by the corporations it was satirizing. I mean, fuck, even the studio itself tried to kill this movie. I'm not saying if it was given a proper release that everybody would have just loved it out of the gate, but it would have had enough general appeal that it would have done well commercially and critically. The latter sits at 71% on Rotten Tomatoes right now. What makes this movie so special, the secret ingredient, if you will, is that there was an effort to conceal this movie. I truly don't think that there's a better example than Idiocracy because they truly are polar opposites in how they got their status. And if I get lost in my own bullshit, you can track it back to just this one point, this one concept, which is this movie manufactured its own status. It did not earn it. And that's a huge part of what makes a cult film a cult film. Now, I'm going to say some things that are going to sound bitchy, but just so we're on the same page, my issue isn't with people who like this movie. It's just that this movie goes against everything that a cult film represents. This film is the participation awards of cult classics, delusional and insincere. And basically, this movie's following is entirely based off of nostalgia. So after its initial failure, Disney just started putting it on the Disney Channel around Halloween. The movie was released in July because they knew that this movie fucking sucked. The following for this movie started with all the kids who got sat down in front of the TV by their mom while she went off to the Halloween party to go get dicked down, just shoving it down the gullet of all its young audience watching the Disney Channel. Even the fans, when you ask them, like, hey, why do you like this movie? Nobody says, oh, well, it's an excellently well-written movie, and the way that they juxtapose, no. Everyone just like, oh, well, I watched it as a kid. That's not what makes a cult movie a cult movie. Just, it blows me away. You know what? I fucking give up. I am going to dedicate a bunch of time to this, and I'm going to make an entirely new video called Why Cult Classics Deserve to Be Respected and What Makes a Cult Classic.
I'm going to form my own band, and we are going to start a revolution, okay?
I can just hear people whining, well, what business of it is yours if people like it or not? Because of standards. That's why. There has to be a reason people like it other than, well, I just watched it when I was a kid. I've got a bunch of movies that I'm nostalgic about that doesn't make them good films, and it doesn't mean that they deserve to be in cult status just because I watched them as a kid. I don't know how much I'm going to have to edit out about that last rant. Fuck, I'm just going on all these fucking rants. All I gotta say is that happy Halloween, everybody. I hope you enjoy it. I hope you get plastered drunk or you get a bunch of candy, depending on how old you are when you watch this. You know, in the comments, I want you guys to make a case why this should be a cult film or shouldn't be a cult film. I want to hear your feedback on this because I've gotten some hate.
Prove me wrong, kids. Prove me wrong.
Subscribe so you can see some more stuff that I've got coming out. And I'll see you on the next one.